Welcome, everybody, to another edition of The Hurry Up. I'm your host, Adam. Let's get into this. So there's been a lot of talk about the New York Giants quarterback and what he did Monday night. It was a good effort. What you want to see, your quarterback do. Was it the greatest effort? No. Some people are saying it is. I don't agree that it was the greatest effort I've seen. I think he kept us in the game, and he made the plays that were there that were needed. He did just enough for us to stay in the game. He did, and that's a fact. He was under siege all night, and that's a fact as well. But there was a announcer that came out and said something that was interesting to me, that was brought to my attention. It was Colin Cowherd. I know people don't like Colin Cowherd, and yes, some of his takes were outlandish, but he made a take, and go look it up. I think it happened yesterday. He was talking about recapping the Monday night football game, and he was talking about how the Cowboys should be happy. Cowboy fans should be happy because they went into a hostile environment, with a revved up New York fan base, which they were, a loud environment, and they came out with a W with a backup quarterback, a banged up line, and not all of their receiving threats. And they ended up winning the game. And, it's kind of interesting to see that because, the Giant fan, we're on the opposite end. We were sitting there saying we're going 3-0. So, he mentioned that, and I thought it was a good point about that. Like, wow, the Cowboys are now, he was right. They came into a hostile environment. They overcame their deficiencies, and somehow they figured out how to win the game. And there was a turning point in the game where, in the third quarter, where the Giants went 3-and-out, punted the ball, and the Cowboys did a reverse or toss play to Elliott. They lost a yard, and then they went deep twice and barely missed the deep ball with the young receiver that they had. So then the Giants get the ball back, go down and score, and then the Cowboys go down and tie the game up after that with some deep passes, and they got the ball in the end zone. And I think that those plays were critical because I think they were trying to test out the Giants secondary and say, hey, can we get guys behind him? And they did. And so once they did that and they realized they can get the ball downfield and their protection was going to hold up, the game changed. But Colin Cowherd was mentioning that. The second half of that little segment that Colin was talking about, he was talking about the Giants. And he was talking about Daniel Jones. And I know people, don't want to talk about Daniel Jones, after a win or a loss, or it feels like you can't criticize this guy because everyone's so sensitive about him. I mean, Eli Manning got blasted in the media every year. Every year, the guy got blasted in the media. And even in 2007, he had some games where you're like head scratching, but they kept with it. But you saw the potential in Eli a lot more than you do with Daniel. And he said something that I've been saying a lot about Daniel. Sometimes when things are perfect, that's when he does all right. And it's true. When the line is perfect, when they don't drop passes, when they're all lined up, he gets a great effort. But he also mentioned that, Lamar Jackson had some adversity last year. The Bengals had some adversity last year with their line and their players, and somehow they overcame. And he even mentioned about talking to Joe Burrow. He's like, the receiver's not lined up, the protection's not set. There's 4 seconds on the clock there. The fan base is rabid in New York, and he was like, and they were playing the Jets. He was talking about Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow's like, I got to get it done. I got to get it done. There was no excuse. He got to get it done. And those are the type of things that you want to see and hear out of a franchise guy. Now, everyone goes, well, Mahomes and Burrow and these guys wouldn't have done the same with this line. I don't know what they would have done. I can say they can do no because, that's the easy word. But like Colin was saying, would they have overcame? Because he did say that Lamar Jackson lost 2 of his guards and 3 of his running backs, and they still were in the top seed of the AFC till he got injured. Yes, there were many other factors, but they were still the top seed until he got injured. And so his point is that you've got to overcome some of these deficiencies. Now, I'm not one to lie. Daniel has been put in a bad position. A bad position. One that is unfavorable to anybody. No line. For 4 years, he had no line. But look what they did in 2019. They had no line, but they rolled him out. He rolled out and threw a ball deep to Darius Slayton in the first game against Tampa Bay, a 40-yard bomb. You know, they did a crossing route with Evan Ingram, and he caught and he ran up the sideline against Tampa Bay for 75 yards. You know, that season he seemed more functional. In these couple of years, it seems like we haven't seen that same guy, whether it's confidence, whether it's offense. And I don't always agree with Colin Cowherd, but he brought up some good points like, man, maybe the Giants have to reevaluate this. I know a lot of guys want to keep him for sentimental reasons, but like the Giants have had bad quarterbacks in their history. You know, I mean, they had Dave Brown, they had Danny Cannell, they had Mike Cherry, Ryan Nassib, you know what I mean? They had Rhett Braum, you know, and they've had three good quarterbacks in my lifetime, but I wasn't really watching the Phil Simms era. But Phil Simms was his quarterback, and he was much maligned the same way as Daniel, but he had more injury issues than Daniel, so that's why he didn't play a lot at the beginning, and the fan base hated him. They always hate the quarterback, everybody. But then they had Kerry Collins, who was pretty good, who Ernie Accorsi acquired in 1999 because Kent Graham wasn't the guy, obviously, and he was a backup quarterback, you know, to say the least. I mean, he had some starting potential, but some of these guys aren't great, and you know, then they had Eli Manning, and now you're replacing a legend. Now let's go over some facts about Daniel real quick. He was at Duke, played with Cutcliffe, who is part of the Eli Manning kind of aura about him, right? And David Cutcliffe was Eli Manning's coach, so of course he got the good word in, right? There were still a lot of flaws to Daniel's game, but they liked him. And then, of course, they fell in full bloom love with him, of course, at the Senior Bowl. And that's when they did more research as they went back. So they weren't even scouting him. They were scouting Justin Herbert. But when Herbert decided not to come out, they pivoted quickly and they went to a quarterback class that was predominantly weak at the time. There weren't that many great quarterbacks in that draft that we thought, right? They didn't believe in Dwayne Haskins because of what happened with those players. And then they had, Kyler Murray, who they weren't touching. Then had Daniel Jones, and then Drew Lock in that draft. So they went and they did the research. Come draft night, they draft the quarterback. Now they drafted the quarterback that a lot of people, like I said, thought was going to go 17. Right? That's where the sweet spot was for Daniel Jones, either 17 or he'll be picked in the second round. But like I said, Daniel Jeremiah said, if you want your guy, you go get him, regardless of where it is. So the Giants had a chance to get Josh Allen, the defensive end that landed in Jacksonville, and they decided to go with the quarterback at the time. Now, remember, they drafted the quarterback before he even gets to the stage. He's getting booed by Giant fans. They show him in the Titantron at Giant Stadium getting booed out the building. Already off to a bad start. Went to a Yankee game, got booed. Right? Everybody had all these doubts about the kid. You know, a guy from Giant Insider walked away in the rain because he was so disappointed in the pick. Right? And so here we are, the first, and I was a guy who understood why they picked Daniel Jones, wasn't, opposed to Daniel like some other people were, and even some content creators were. They tell you now they weren't, but go back and watch their videos. They did. But now all of a sudden we want to, we feel bad because the owner came out and, we did Daniel dirty. Look, the Giants didn't do him any favors. But when you have a franchise quarterback, sometimes you want to elevate their play. I mean, you look at Deshaun Watson, right? Case in point. He had a horrible team, but yet he still threw for 4,800 yards and 33 touchdowns. Horrible team with Texans. Their defense was atrocious, but he still produced when he needed to produce. I know you're going to talk about wins and losses, and those things happen. But at the end of the day, you still produce. Justin Herbert had a horrible line in his first year with and still had a pretty bad line with the Chargers, and he overcame and threw 33 touchdowns as well and over 4,000 yards. So you knew, like, wow, that was good. The other quarterbacks, like a Baker Mayfield, they're put in a situation. Baker made the playoffs. I mean, he's not great, but he did certain things to get there. Now, you could tell me, well, the ready-made teams and all that stuff. Look, you get drafted who you get drafted by, right? You got to play for who you play. You can't just say, well, you got a ready-made team. I mean, the Bengals had nobody. They went from a 2-14 team to a 4-12 team to a Super Bowl team, And right now they're struggling out the gate with that Super Bowl hangover, but at the same time, he overcame a lot. Now, you could say they had Jamar Chase and all this other stuff. You know, the Giants, they tried to bring in guys. Kenny Golladay has been a bust. That's not on Daniel. But again, you know, I think right now the thing for Daniel is, if I were him, I would want to go to a different situation. You know, and if he were in a different team, he'd already be out the league or on a different team already. I mean, look at Mitchell Trubisky. That guy went to the playoffs twice in Chicago. They got rid of him real quick. Real quick. And he was a third overall pick. You know, they traded up and they mortgaged the farm to get that guy. And set it back. I mean, the Bears got rid of him so fast, that they then drafted, a couple years later, they drafted Justin Fields, who right now they're probably not happy with, who probably will end up on a different team somewhere else as well. You know, so it takes a lot to get guys there. Not every team is going to be ready for it. But even like the Cardinals, right? You saw Murray went like this. He's still here. I mean, he's plateaued a little bit, but he's still here. Jalen Hurts, same thing. Jalen Hurts is a second-round pick. How come he's playing better than Daniel? And don't tell me it's because of the team he went to, because the team he went to was abysmal. He got drafted by Doug Peterson, and they lost. And he ended up showing you in games that he could play and had some running ability. The next year, people were like, he's not that good. And he ended up taking the team to the playoffs. And now this year, he improved in every aspect of his game. And the Eagles, you know, who knows what they're going to do with him. But most likely, if he keeps playing at this trajectory, he's going to get a big-time contract. And he's been in the league less years than Daniel. And I'm not trying to say bash Daniel. He had a good game on Monday. Was it great? By no stretch of the imagination was it great. Was it good? Did it keep us in the game? Yes. If somebody had caught another pass or the offensive line blocked a couple times, maybe they score. I mean, they did a double move with Darius Slayton up the sideline against Trayvon Diggs, and he beat him. He was beat for a touchdown, but Evan Neal obviously gives it the sack, so we never know if that play is going to develop when it happens, right? We don't know. And I do think the Giants coaching staff has what they have to work with. But let's be honest, the Giants GM and coach came in. They knew the situation. They knew the guys they had here. They didn't even play Golladay. Look, he had that horrible effort against the Buffalo Bills or the Bengals in that preseason game. I think it was the Bengals. I'm sorry. Where everyone's like, oh, well, you know, he didn't really have that effort, blah, blah, blah. That was his first sign. We kept him here because of $72 million. You didn't trade Darius Slayton because you didn't trust all the receivers. Now, does Daniel Jones have a competent amount of receivers? He doesn't. But, you know, there were times where he ran the football where he could have unloaded it if he wanted to receivers down the field. He decided to run and get the first down and live to play another down, which is a smart play. You can't complain about that. But what Colin Cowherd was saying about that in the video was some of these guys would make plays, like Mahomes. If he breaks the pocket, do we know what happens? We really don't. And even then, he had an offensive line that people were like, oh, what's going to happen in the Super Bowl? They still went to the Super Bowl. It wasn't until the Super Bowl where they had guys like Pierre Paul and Shaq Barrett and Devin White where they, you know, hurt him. And he still made plays downfield against the Tampa Bay defense. They were still in that ball game, even though Remmers was getting turned around like a turnstile. Why? Because of the mobility and the arm accuracy and the talent they had. Yes, they had Tyreek Hill. Yes, they had Travis Kelce. I get it. He's still producing now with the guys that he has. You know, sometimes sometimes you need your guys to overcome. And Daniel, you know, he did what he had to do on you know, Monday night. It wasn't the greatest effort I've seen out of Daniel. Remember, the Tampa Bay game comes to mind, his opening game. You know, the game against Detroit Lions where he threw for some touchdowns. You know, the game against the Redskins where he threw 5 touchdowns. You know, and then the game against the Saints recently was one of those are 5 of his better games. You know, we came out on the losing end in a couple of those series, but he won those games. He won Tampa Bay, he won Washington, he won New Orleans. But what happened there? There was plays being made downfield. His receivers didn't let him down, and they didn't drop the football. And everything was damn near perfect. It's the times where you got to overcome sometimes guys being in and out of the lineup. You know, you're not always going to have it perfect. And whether or not he's the guy that's here doesn't really matter to me. I think the Giants have made their decision. Aikman said it on the broadcast. They basically made their decision with not extending him. Because if you look at it, it was a good idea not to extend him, and it was also a good idea It was a good business decision. However, if you look at it, if they did extend him, it would have probably been a good deal as well, because the franchise tag is going to be $30+ million. So for that right there, if you wanted to extend him, it was going to be $21 million guaranteed next year for his rookie deal. Now you're going to give him an extra $9 million, and let's be honest, he's not going to want to take anything less. If he's been here, he's going to look at it like, I ain't played with no offensive line, no receiver, none of this, blah, blah, blah. Now you want me to take a pay cut, kick rocks. I mean, and I wouldn't be mad if Daniel said that. Now, I don't think the Giants are going to want to invest that much money in this guy who in three games this year hasn't thrown for 200 yards. Again, we can debate the debate, but you are the team you are. It's not like Daniel didn't know his receivers. It's not like they didn't know it. The scheme, this Brian Daboll was supposed to make him better and scheme guys open, right? That's what we heard. That was the whole point of this regime, right? They were bringing guys in to help scheme open. And there was guys that he missed in the Panther game. Tony was wide open, Sills was wide open. He missed them here and there. So we'll never know what would have happened in those games, because those are in the past, but we see what was on the film. But to me, I'm not going to give him any more excuses. I'm not going to give him any more passes. I understand that. Everything is everything. Those are the cards you were dealt. Those are the cards you're dealt. And you got to overcome and rise up sometimes. And this is not the last game we're going to need him in. But like I said, watch this game on Sunday. Daniel Jones needs to have more than 200 yards in this game against a team that the fan base feels they can beat, when their quarterback has less yards than Daniel and has looked putrid. This is a game where he needs to rise above it and take the team on his back and win this game and say, look, we can do it. Because what's going to happen is you have the Ravens, you have the Packers, and you have the Jaguars coming up. Not in that order. You actually have the Packers, Ravens, Jaguars in that order. They play good defense. And Daniel has trouble with good defenses, and it's not going to help when you're not having great players out there. But hey, you have Saquon Barkley. Get him out and involved more in the passing game. Do things that are going to help him. I don't think this coaching staff has done enough to help Daniel. But it is to his detriment, because at the end of the day, that's going to cost Daniel. It is. At the end of the day, it's going to cost Daniel. I'm sorry to say that, but it's going to be him. And I think the reason they're doing it, and I'm not saying they're sabotaging him on purpose, but let's be real. They didn't play Kenny Golladay much snaps in either game, and he hasn't produced to warrant being played. Kadarius Toney, is flaking out on his team, right? He hasn't done much. Wan'Dale Robinson, who I heard was going to be this great jitterbug of a receiver, hasn't done crap and has been injured as well. Okay? And then you have David Sills, who probably shouldn't be on the starting team. Richie James, who people are telling me is a not bad player. Look, he was an undrafted free agent. Come on. He's not great. He's not even probably worth us being a starter. But he's out there doing his job, trying to make it work. I know I'm missing somebody on this receiving core. Oh, Sterling Shepard. Again, he gave us the 3 games and an injury. Sorry, Shep, but that's what he does. And then you have the tight ends who are lacking. So they haven't done much offensively. It's Barkley and then everybody else. So now he runs around in this game. You think the Bears, the Packers, the Ravens, and the Jaguars don't know he's going to run now? They're going to stack the box and put a spy out there. Put 8 in the box, and have the 9th guy is going to be the spy. Now you're going to have to win from the pocket. You're going to have to threaten downfield, whether that's throwing it to deep. You got to try something. Move the pocket for him. There's many different things you could do to help Daniel Jones achieve success in the offense. And sometimes he's got to overcome some stuff as well. Now, I know people are going to tell me, well, Adam, the new guy comes in and fails, you're gonna act the same way. No, because I know what the process is. I know this regime is not going to try to put the next quarterback in harm's way. Heck, they tried to not put this guy in harm's way. Galwinski stinks right now. And John Feliciano is not a center. Sorry, he's not. It's a different ball game. And then they're playing musical chairs at left guard while they wait for Shane Lemieux. And Andrew Thomas is a rock, which seems to be the case already. But sometimes you got to overcome that. You got to scheme. You got to figure it out. And I feel against good defenses, they're going to have trouble. And this is probably what you're going to see most of the offense. The Giants haven't scored over 20 points in their 3 games. As a matter of fact, they've regressed. They went 20, 19, and now 16 points. And I think they're going to score about 20, 24 points in this game. And they better not overlook this team, because this Bears team is not bad. They're not great. They've won games by scrapping and clawing. Don't be that team that they get right against or overlook them because you're licking your chops to go play the Packers in London. But at the end of the day, we got to look at this as an overall body of work for Daniel Jones. Not just this season, but the overall 3 years he's been in the league. And in 3 years plus in the league, he hasn't done much. He's 12-46. Or 12-36 or something like that. Something ridiculous. It's not a great record. Not all of that's on him, but you can't have everything perfect either. And that's what Daniel Jones is. His history, his MO is he needs a lot of things. And this was the first game where nothing was perfect, but yet he still ran the football, but we lost the game. At the end result, all that effort was lost the game. Now, I know his teammates let him down, but things are going to happen like that. You know, you had a chance to win the game at the end of the game. And yes, his receiver fell down, but still, you had a chance to win. And at the end of the day, we didn't. And it's unfortunate what has happened to this kid. And it's unfortunate how the Giants have done him dirty. But I don't care what John Mara says about, oh, we've done this kid dirty. After this year, it's it. That's it. That's it. Move on. Let him move on. Break the ties. Usher in a new era. Bring in a guy that they want. You know, bring in a guy that they're going to feel. If they fail with their guy, it's better to fail with your guy than fail with somebody else's. A guy who hasn't done much in 4 years and still hasn't done much in the passing game. Granted, he hasn't had much to work with. I get it. I get all the stuff that you're saying, but sometimes you got to overcome things and you got to put your team on your back sometimes, or give us the glimmer that you look at Matthew Stafford and look at Deshaun Watson. Those guys were great on their teams. Their teams were terrible, but they were great. They made everybody on offense better. They can't help that their defense gives up points or doesn't stop somebody with a nosebleed. Even in the 2015 and 2016, Eli Manning overcame deficiencies. He did. He had a couple of his best years under McAdoo. And they went 11 personnel. They had no offensive line. And he still was throwing 25 plus touchdowns a year. Heck, he only had 35 1 year under McAdoo. So sometimes you just got to overcome. And to me, I hate to say this, Daniel, you're a good guy. You've done admirable here, but it may be time to move on. And I know we have 14 games left, and things could change. I don't really think they're going to change much. I think you're going to see a few more games where the Giants are in a winnable situation, like the Bears, the Seattle, Washington, where you're going to see him play decently. And people are going to say, well, hey, look what happens when you do this. Right now he has 3 touchdowns passes. Right now he's going to average 17 touchdowns and about, 7 intercepts. Right? That's not going to cut it, regardless. And I know that they're bereft of talent, but there's nobody walking through that door that's going to come out. I don't care what receiver, T.Y. Hilton, Will Fuller, all these guys that you see out there, the free agency. The reason they're free agents, and they're not on other people's teams. They're not going to come in here and change. Now, if the Giants somehow miraculously at the end, towards the trade deadline, are maybe still in it, maybe they consider making a trade. But then what happens? Who are you going to trade? Well, you're going to trade Barkley? Because that's basically the only asset you got on the team that you willing to part ways with. No one's going to take on Leonard Williams' contract. No one's going to do any of that. So, at the end of the day, this is the guy we're with. I'm not, and a lot of people are like, oh, you got to root for the guy. He says on the Giants. No. You don't. You root for the helmet and the NY. I didn't root for Kent Graham. I just hope he didn't fuck everything up. Danny Cannell, I was like, oh, God, this guy's our quarterback. But he plays at the Giants. Let's just hope everybody can keep it going because he's not good. You know, I don't just root for guys to root for guys. I root for the New York Giants. And if they win, great. If they don't, players come and go. The only player I loved as a quarterback in my era was Eli Manning. And I liked Kerry Collins. I thought he was good for the Giants. But there's one quarterback that I loved, it was Eli. And, there's been a lot of other guys who've tried in this era. And again, I'll close with this. Daniel has been given the raw deal. Absolutely. And it's tough. It really is. I know everyone says a fair assessment, but you can get an assessment. You can't just keep saying incomplete, because at the end of the day, if you're 7 seasons in and you still don't know where this guy stands, then what's the point? The point here and now is he's here. You evaluate on what the basis on what the team has given him. The team has given him nothing. He can't overcome certain deficiencies. Well, now you got to move on. And give it to another guy and see what you can do. And a guy who's been here 4 years, I'm rambling on right now, but I think I've talked enough about Daniel. This is it for Daniel. I don't think you got to come back. I don't care what he does in this year. I think it's time to move on. Quarterback is a funny position. And Cooper Rush is winning games for his team. And don't tell me he has a lot more, because he had a lot less and has a lot less talent than Daniel Jones, but he's finding ways to win games when the Cowboys need him most. Anyway, this has been an edition of the Hurry Up. Hope you enjoyed this. I know I'm going to get a lot of backlash because everyone's going to be like, well, you're not giving Daniel a chance. Well, you know what? It is what it is. I know I've been over the hurry up time. Normally my videos aren't this long, but I had a lot to say, and I wanted to get it out there and put it out there. I'm going to root for the New York Giants. Let's see what they do. Got a winnable game this Sunday and a couple games where you may not be the favorite in, and we'll see what happens from there. Adversity strikes. Let's hope they rise to the occasion and don't snowball this into a losing streak. Because I'll tell you this right now. You lose to the Chicago Bears, season's over. Good night, the lights. Ain't nothing to play for at that point. If you can't beat a team that you deem you're better than. We'll find out on Sunday. That's why they play the games. Hope you enjoyed this. I know I went long. Thanks for sticking with me. Hit that like or subscribe button. And see you next time.